Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday morning out there. Hope we all had a wonderful start to our week yesterday, and we've got a very active pattern in store for the eastern United States, from a really potent cold front to potentially hurricane, but definitely tropical storm conditions throughout much of the Northeast going into this weekend. So again, we're kind of moving all out here for September, giving a little bit of everything for everybody, and we're going to break that down for you in today's video. Now, if you haven't already subscribed, definitely consider doing so. And if you like the video, definitely make sure to hit that like button and comment. Let me know where you're watching from and what you're excited to see out there as we get into a bit of a pattern change over the next week or two. Also, here at the beginning of the video, I did want to apologize for not having a video out in about, I think, 4 days now. Unfortunately, I've really been fighting the homework bug, if you will. I've been feeling a little, kind of overloaded a little bit with work and that, and just, a lot has been going on. But I set my alarm this morning, I actually listened to it, and here I am getting up nice and early to make a video for you. So hopefully we'll have a really nice, productive day. Normally, whenever I get up early, the day ends up pretty good. It's just kind of hard to take that first step out of the bed in the morning, as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to. Alrighty, I guess with that said, though, let's go ahead and jump into your forecast, as we do have a good bit to discuss here this morning. Alrighty, so taking a look at current satellite imagery out there, this is that cold front that we've been talking about, and we're going to use infrared today just because the sun hasn't quite risen over the entire continental United States, so it'd kind of be showing you half a dark map here. But infrared does a good job of showing this cold front to us. Again, here showing where we're seeing some of those storms firing up, and we had some pretty strong ones down into Texas yesterday, but this entire front stretches from up near Quebec all the way down towards the Rio Grande. So again, a very nice front, and this is bringing a very nice pattern change. As you can tell behind it, a very different air mass than what we're seeing on that front itself. So again, some very welcome change on the horizon for a lot of folks this week as we begin to cool things off and really dry things out. Now, again, this front is, bringing some pretty good amount of precipitation with it right now, raining up near Detroit, Cleveland, and that band of rain and showers stretching again all the way down to the Rio Grande. So places like Memphis, Little Rock, Oklahoma City, Paducah, Kentucky, up towards Louisville, and through much of the Ohio River Valley, seeing some rain this morning. And this entire band of rain will slowly continue to shift off to the east throughout this afternoon, where we could even see potentially a couple strong storms down into the Carolinas and up through the Mid-Atlantic by the time we get into this evening. So definitely watching for that. Alright, so let's go ahead and run you through that futurecast here through today and really through the next couple of days, getting you through the rest of this front. Again, going into this afternoon, expect those showers to continue along the Ohio River Valley, although slowly clearing throughout the day. It's going into this afternoon that we're going to see some of those stronger storms begin to form, especially really starting throughout the escarpment through the Appalachian chain from North Georgia up through western North Carolina into upstate South Carolina, up through Virginia, West Virginia, and likely even up towards Maryland, and areas even further north of there have the chance to see some pretty strong storms. So getting into about, that 5 to 8 o'clock time frame tonight, we could see strong storms anywhere from the I-85 corridor in South Carolina all the way up towards the DMV. And right now, the Storm Prediction Center doesn't have, any outlined area specifically, but again, wouldn't be surprised to see some of these storms have the chance at least to produce some gusty winds, some lightning, and maybe even some heavy rain for some folks as that front moves on through. Now, those storms will eventually die out this evening, although while that's, dying out in the southeast, we're still going to have pretty widespread rain in the northeast overnight tonight, I think, for places like Albany, through much of upstate New York into New England itself. Could see some rain during the overnight hours tonight. Now, as we get into tomorrow afternoon, this front isn't going to make too much progress, and we could once again see another area of showers and storms in the southeast, but I think tomorrow afternoon, the northeast will be the ones to really cash in on that rain, much like the southeast will do today. So tomorrow afternoon could get a pretty potent line of storms to march through New England from Vermont down through western Mass, through Connecticut, through Long Island even. Could see some strong storms before that eventually finally works its way on through tomorrow evening. And by the time we get into our Thursday afternoon, a much nicer day is in store as that high pressure really begins to work on in, and that sinking air brings some pretty nice blue clear skies, but more importantly, lower dew points. And that's going to be a really big story with this cold front. So again, right now, a lot of us still up into the 60s with dew points, even upper 60s, 70s for us folks in the southeast, for the Carolinas, Georgia, and even down towards Alabama, seeing some of those higher dew points. Now, as this front moves on through, tomorrow afternoon, again, much nicer dew points, much cooler weather through much of the Ohio River Valley and Midwest. Still holding on to those dew points in the 60s and 70s, though, here east of the Appalachian chain, from Maine all the way down towards the Carolinas and into Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and even Mississippi. It's once we go into tomorrow afternoon and evening that front really kind of begins to push across the Appalachian chain, and by the time we're waking up Thursday morning, this is 8 a.m. Thursday morning. Look at these dew points getting well down into the 50s and even 40s for a lot of folks, even east of the Appalachian chain, from Harrisburg all the way down through Virginia and even into upstate South Carolina. Could feel very nice and even fall like Thursday morning. But if you think Thursday morning is nice, I'll just give you a bit of a spoiler alert here. Wait till Friday morning. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of the Appalachian chain get down potentially into the upper 30s for lows, especially up towards you folks near West Virginia and Virginia. Those highest peaks really could get quite cool. So again, Friday morning is going to be the nicest morning for just about everyone here in the East Coast. Dew points down into the 40s, 50s, and even 30s for some folks. And temperatures also getting down widespread 40s, widespread 50s, and even some isolated 30s out there for a lot of folks. And of course, kind of, depending on where you're at, will depend exactly how cool you get. The further south and east you are, a little bit warmer, more like the 50s. But again, those higher elevations up into the Appalachian chain, up into the northeast, and mid-Atlantic could very well see some 30s as well. Alrighty, so after this cold front swings on through, we're going to definitely see a stretch of kind of some nicer weather before Hurricane Lee makes an arrival into the northeast, and we'll definitely get to that here in a second. But just kind of getting through the rest of this week. Again, that front crosses through tomorrow and the following day, and then we have a really nice stretch through this weekend of overall just kind of average middle of September fall-like weather for a lot of folks. Now, going into this weekend, we do have some question marks between our models. GFS shows a bit more of a robust system trying to work its way on through the eastern United States going into this Saturday and Sunday. The European model is much lighter on that, not showing nearly as potent of a system, but I do think nonetheless, going into later this weekend, we could see another push of even drier air, as well as, of course, the potential of maybe some storms with that. But that would definitely mean early next week is really nice out there, potentially the most fall-like weather we've had. So, so far this September has treated us pretty well, and you can see that here as well with our dew point map. Again, muggy today, but watch this cold front come on through and crash those dew points down for just about everybody. Again, it's going to feel really nice Friday, Saturday. By the time we get into Sunday, some of those dew points may try to work their way back up, especially in the southeast. But after that, we could again get another push of dry air that once again, going out into next week, keeps us in a relatively nice fall-like pattern. So it's going to be a stretch of weather you really want to enjoy. And in the 6 to 10 day outlook, again, relatively average temperatures for most of us here in the east, from the Mississippi River Valley through the Ohio River Valley and much of the mid-Atlantic as well. It's going to feel quite nice in that extended period. So again, we've been quite blessed so far this September with very nice temperatures, and we'll definitely hope that that will continue into October. All right, so that's what we're seeing kind of back at home itself. What about the big story, Hurricane Lee out there? Still continuing to spin away here pretty well east of the Bahamas by a couple hundred miles. And again, a pretty strong storm this morning, still at major hurricane status. Now, Lee is expected over the next couple of days to begin to turn north and kind of shoot the gap here between the East Coast and Bermuda before likely at this point making landfall this Saturday or Sunday somewhere in the northeastern United States or Atlantic Canada into Nova Scotia. So landfall is all but certain at this point. Still, though, have to kind of iron out those details on where is it going to be, kind of anywhere from Massachusetts, again, all the way over to Nova Scotia. Some other things we're watching out here in the Atlantic. This is Hurricane Margot continuing to kind of work northward here. It doesn't look like it's going to be much of a threat to anybody and will likely begin to dissipate and become extratropical over the next week as it continues to gain latitude. We do have another invest to watch out for here into the Atlantic. This one does have a chance of, producing potentially a hurricane over the next couple of weeks. But as for the track of that one, again, a lot of models right now kind of take it out to sea, but it's just so far out there that we're not really going to worry about it too much right now, as we really just need to give it some time to, have our models really get a handle on it. So we're really just going to focus on Hurricane Lee today. All right, so again, the National Hurricane Center map, again, high chance of this invest developing into a tropical system over the next week. But as for exactly where that goes, no imminent threat over the next 7 to 10 days for anybody. So we'll let that continue to kind of organize a little bit and collect some more data on that one before we really begin to hone in potential impacts for anybody. Margot, again, we talked about that one, likely continuing out to sea and will not cause much of a problem for anybody outside of some large waves for some of these islands out here in the Atlantic. All right, now Hurricane Lee, this is the big story. This is the one that has, been in the news for what feels like forever now, as this formed all the way back here in the middle of the Atlantic and has slowly but surely worked its way now up near the Bahamas. And we're now getting to that point where parts of the United States are in the cone for Hurricane Lee here. So again, a major hurricane currently expected to stay that way through today before tomorrow, likely weakening back to hurricane status as this kind of gets into some cooler waters, as well as potentially some wind shear kind of fighting it a little bit. Now, if you remember, I can't quite remember the name of the hurricane now, but we had a hurricane just a couple weeks ago that was out in this way as well. That actually caused some upwelling, and we're seeing some cooler waters in this same general area. So that will help actually weaken Lee a little bit and help us out a good bit going forward. So kind of a bit of a blessing there with that. So taking a look at the cone again, we now do have impacts expected to the United States with anywhere from Nantucket all the way through just about the entire state of Maine, as well as just about all of Nova Scotia in the cone for likely landfall sometime between the second half of Saturday and into early Sunday. So what we're generally looking at here is Lee will continue to kind of just move slowly before eventually this cold front that's working through the eastern United States kind of picks it up and helps to really bring it north, and it'll move quite quickly from Friday to Sunday from Bermuda all the way up towards New England. So the good news is as this moves towards the United States, it will continue to pick up in speed. So that will definitely help make the timing of the impacts at least a little shorter compared to if we were dealing with a bit of a slower system. Alright, so as for landfall itself, this will be important, but to let you know ahead of time, this is not going to be your typical hurricane that we see in Florida, where we have a very strong eye wall, and that kind of just, we have to pinpoint exactly where that's going to hit for localized impacts. Hurricane Lee, as it continues to work northward and hits these cooler waters, will begin to expand in size and also begin to work in tandem with that cold front and a trough up in Canada, and will become extra tropical quite likely. So that's going to do a couple of things, some good and some bad. I'll start with the bad here. The bad is it's going to, again, expand the storm and expand the wind field with it. So the impacts from Lee here will be a lot more widespread than probably an average tropical system. The good news with that is, though, that also means the winds will become weaker. So instead of seeing widespread hurricane force winds, or let me rephrase that, instead of seeing kind of tight, super strong hurricane force winds, we're going to see widespread tropical storm force winds. So honestly, this is going to feel a lot like a nor'easter in terms of kind of some of those wind and rain impacts in the Northeast. This will be a bit more of a warm chord system compared to some of the cooler systems we see in the fall and winter time up into the Northeast. So nonetheless, impacts will still be pretty significant for a lot of folks up here. Now, again, so no matter where this goes, just for example, if this is the center of it, we're going to have a pretty wide tropical storm force wind field. So if that center is out here over near Nova Scotia, that means those tropical storm force winds might not impact the United States very much. But if we get some of these tracks that kind of bring it almost right into Cape Cod, we're going to see a lot of the Northeast that is going to see widespread wind impacts, and we could definitely see some downed trees and power lines due to those, sustained tropical storm force winds. So still have to iron out the details here, but there are a lot here in the Euro camp that bring this kind of curving it back inland a bit towards New England, but also equally as many that kind of just bring this thing up into Nova Scotia. So right now, kind of, still a pretty large range of possibilities, and we'll be able to iron that down even more over the next couple of days. Looking at the spaghetti models themselves, again, kind of two different camps here. A lot that bring this into Nova Scotia, but still a notable number of members that bring this kind of curved back towards New England, and we'll definitely have to watch that as we go through the next couple of days. But nonetheless, somebody up in this part of the world is going to see quite a storm with some very strong wind gusts as well as some torrential rainfall. Alrighty, so I'm going to run you through the latest Euro model that we got overnight and what it shows. And again, let's go ahead and bring this into Friday afternoon. So I think Friday afternoon still looks quite nice for just about everyone in the Northeast. It's going into Friday night and into Saturday that things begin to go downhill. So Again, Hurricane Lee will, or potentially Tropical Storm Lee by this point, will likely be pretty well off the northeast coast. But again, going into early Saturday, that range of possibilities, could be anywhere from right off the coast of Massachusetts to pretty well off the coast by a couple hundred of miles. So as we move this ahead, again, you'll notice Saturday afternoon, I think is when impacts are really going to be probably the worst here, with very strong winds and very heavy rainfall, likely somewhere in the northeast. Right now, the best shot of that being Nantucket, Cape Cod, and into Maine. But if this track continues to shift any more to the west, those impacts could be felt further inland for places like New Hampshire, Vermont, western Massachusetts, Connecticut even could see some of those impacts. Now, one thing you might be wondering is, well, we're looking at a pressure here of 961 millibars. Oftentimes, that's a pretty strong Category 2 storm. Why aren't we looking at tropical storm impacts? Again, it's all really going to have to do with the size of this system and how it interacts with these troughs. This, again, will still be a very strong storm in terms of pressure, but just because of how large it's going to be, that wind field will be expanded outward. So again, kind of just has to do with some laws of physics here. The tighter the core and the stronger it is, the stronger the winds. But the more you spread out that core, even if you deepen the pressure, that wind is going to be spread out, and the max winds themselves will likely be lower. So again, nonetheless, a very strong system here, and we're going to have to watch for very big waves with this thing. Again, anytime you get a low of this magnitude, this is going to be very similar to a strong nor'easter in the winter. Just instead of blizzard-like conditions, we're going to get blowing rain, and definitely still having the chance of those downed trees and power lines. So again, Saturday afternoon could be the peak of the storm for places in eastern Massachusetts here. But going into Saturday evening and into early Sunday is when landfall is the most likely. Although by that point, the storm will continue to weaken. And honestly, I think places here in Massachusetts and eastern Mass could have higher impacts than where this thing actually makes landfall going into the early morning hours of Sunday, just due to the fact that it will be weakening as it gets closer inland. And by the time we get to Sunday afternoon, still some rain and some wind, but honestly, things improving. And by the time we hit next Monday, things look much nicer through much of the northeast. Alrighty, so taking a look at wind gusts with this thing. Again, going into Saturday afternoon, we could get gusts into hurricane force. Would not surprise me at all. And again, kind of hard to note here, but just look at how massive this wind field is. So if we do get the center of this thing to somehow manage to make landfall over Nantucket or Cape Cod, we're going to have big time problems in the northeast with widespread wind gusts getting up into the 60, even 70 mile an hour range for a couple of hours as this thing continues to move northward, although weaken. Now, also, if we get the center of this thing kind of even east of Maine, then places really just in eastern Maine and maybe Nantucket, Cape Cod will be the only ones to really see these strong tropical storm force winds. So that's why, going back to this map, this track is so important. Do we see that landfall kind of back here near Massachusetts, or is it all the way back towards Nova Scotia? That's going to have massive impacts in the rain and wind that we see over the course of this weekend. So again, a lot to iron out there. And same thing with the rainfall totals. Wherever that core is, we're going to definitely see more rain, wherever the core is, as I said, compared to further off to one side or the other. So what I can tell you we know right now is someone in the Northeast or Atlantic Canada is going to get clobbered pretty good by this thing with very strong winds, very heavy rain, and quite an impressive storm for a tropical storm for this time of the year, and a part of the country that just doesn't really see them all that often. So still a very interesting storm, and we had a storm hit California earlier this year. Now we're having a storm hit Maine and potentially Massachusetts. So again, quite an interesting thing, and 2023 has been quite a wild year thus far here in the world of weather. Alrighty, so that's all I've got for you on this Tuesday morning. I still got to go to class, and I should leave in about 20 minutes or so. So this timing worked out pretty well. But again, I want to thank you for sticking around and watching the whole video. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll definitely try my best to get around to answering those throughout the day as I can try to find some time. With that said, though, have a great rest of your Tuesday. Get out there and enjoy some of that fall-like weather, and I will see you all next time.